Have you seen her? Ain't she great? She's something you'll appreciate. I'm sure you understand just what I mean. Everybody, everywhere, is falling for her now. I'm speaking of the new Ford, and boy, it's sure a wow. Lay off, people, lay off, folks. None of your sarcastic jokes. Henry's made a lady out of Lizzie. Not a rattle, not a bit. Lizzie now has lots of it. Henry's made a lady out of Lizzie. There's everything inside her now except a kitchen sink, a mirror, and a powder puff, a shower bath, I think. I'll bet my life that this Miss Ford will live as long as Fanny Ward. Henry's made a lady out of Lizzie. Now, you remember Lizzie, how she used to run before? Going 15 miles an hour, she would lose a door. When she was doing 20, remember how you feel? And 35...
All right, like I said, I'm Mike Bender. I'm out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm here with a lot of friends. So first thing I'd like to talk about is this is a brand new piece. The drive plates for the 2627, the wide drum and drive plates for the... I want to run that video. We put together a little video about this thing. It's just an introduction. Take a look, and if you got any questions at the end, I'll try to answer them for you. Welcome back to ModelT-Tips-.com. That's our website. Glad to be back with you. I'm really kind of excited about today because I'm going to introduce you to a new product that's being made to support our Model T hobby. A gentleman by the name of Mike Hartman, one of our members in the Arkansas Tin Lizzies. You may remember him if you're a TT guy. He's the one that a number of years ago started building the high-speed ring gears for the ring and pinion gears for the TT truck. He took it upon himself to build early and late drive plates. These were manufactured out of 4140, I believe. Bill will correct me if I'm wrong. They're CNC'd, they're one piece, there's no rivets involved in it, you'll notice. Pretty much followed the Ford drawing completely all the way through, with the exception that he made this a little beefier down here, seeing how we don't have any rivets, to give it a little, what he thought might be needed for a little extra strength. But again, these are one piece, no rivets, made to an exact tolerance. These are absolutely magnificent, and they, right out of the box, if everything else is squared up, this will run very, very true. There is a difference in the fingers between early and late drive plates. So if you were to replace one of these, you would want to take the rivet loose, get your old pins out, get your fingers out rather, and supplied with the drum are pins that will slide in. But rather than being riveted over like the originals were, Mike was a little concerned that maybe when we press these, if we got a little carried away, too big of a hammer, whatever, that we might create a problem on this being able to move. So it's provided with a small hole cutter key in, and there is no pressure other than this thing just runs up and down. So a cotter key here is a good application for it. So there is, like I said, there is a difference. Early ones late ones are thinner, smaller pin, and the earlier ones are the big pins. So you got to reuse your fingers, but you don't have to worry about the pins. They come with it. These are really an excellent product. I can't say enough, but I will say one thing. Bill Howell, I'm at Bill's car barn today. Bill Howell and Mike Bender, neither one of us are involved in this undertaking. This is all Mike Hart. Was told that he probably needed a new drive plate when he was over here at Bill's pouring Babbitt and doing his rebuilding an engine, and he said, oh, I need a good drive plate? Well, hell, I'll just make one. So that's what started him down this road. We've got the original 6 or 7 that he made. He's in production now to make another 25. I think I saw numbers like 12 of the 12 and 15, something like that. 15 of the 26, 27s, because those are sometimes hard to find. And I think we got an ongoing thing here. So these there'll be 25 of them available at 1st of March, somewhere in there. So if you're interested in one of these, there will be Mike's contact information at the end of this video, and please reach out to him and support him. A little bit more about Mike. Mike has 3 big, huge, very expensive CNC machines. He makes parts for the government for things like cruise missiles and stuff he can't tell us what it's for, but at any rate, knows how to build something to an exact tolerance. He did, like I said, he did follow the Ford drawings, but he did take liberty on not doing the rivets and a little beefier down here. But these things, with a little bit of work, can become very, very accurate. If you remember, we did a video, one of our videos on transmission overhauls. We gave a number of, was really thrilled if we had 4 to 5, 6 thousandths maximum run out. And that was using old drive plates, old brake drums, and what have you. With this, I can get it to where it's within a thousandths in a scoosh. What we have set up here, and I'll hear in just a moment, got a couple of digital readout and a dial indicator. These are on new main shafts by Dave Nolte, new brake drums complete with shafts from Dave Nolte. But it did take a little bit of work to get the companion flange on the drum to where when we mounted it all together, we achieved this very, very acceptable amount of run out. Why do you want to get run out? Well, we drive our cars faster today. Anything that you can do to get things in alignment and balanced makes the engine happier, lives longer, and runs down the road for a lot longer time, like I said, longer. So I have a Starrett digital on this that's smarter than I am and reads out to numbers I don't understand. We're reading out to the 5th decimal point. So right now it's showing, well, I don't even know what that number is. But at any rate, I'm going to spin this around. But prior to doing that, this is pretty sensitive. I've got bearing clearance in here. You've got to have bearing clearance. So how I grab hold of it or push or shove on it kind of affects the reading. But I'm going to do my darndest to just turn it slow enough. Right there, I'm reading 5/10 thousandths of an inch. There's 6. 6.5, 7, 8, 9, and I should start coming back down here. There's 7, 5, 4, 2, and back around. So I've got less than a thousandths run out on this 26, 27 drive plate. Combination, new drum, new main shafts. That's very, very acceptable. Thrilled to death. I can't do that with used stuff, even truing it up the best we can because the surfaces are so bad. And while I'm talking about that, why don't we just touch base? If you have a drive plate that has a lot of taper here, you've got to get rid of that. and especially if it's tapered bigger OD at the top than it is at the bottom. If it's the other way, well, you can kind of fudge and time save a fourth main in. But normally these have to be trued up. These surfaces are usually pretty rough, so it's very difficult to get good accurate readings to know that you've got center. Same thing with the brake drum shaft. They'll have a little bearing wear, they might be rough. You know, there's all kinds of horrible conditions that these things could be in. So working with something that's brand new is really, really nice. You can really do a heck of a job. The rivets could be loose in your existing drive plate. That can be repaired. Again, I refer you to I think we covered some of that on our earlier video on transmission overhaul. But if the holes are so wallered out because the rivets were so loose in between the drive plate, cast iron drive plate, and the steel shaft, trying to get that back to dead center is just almost impossible. Can be done, takes a lot of work. Let's take a look at our pre-25 or 25 and earlier drum. Here I just have a Starrett, reads in 10 thousandths increments. So 1 is a thousandths. And if I turn this one around, there's about a 5/10 thousandths, almost a thousandths, thousandths and 2/10. And now I'll come back around here and pick up 0 again. So again, a little over a thousandths worth of run out on it. It's an excellent product. Might not be for everybody. The price point on them is $700. But if you consider the fact that buying a brake drum with a new shaft on it, they're $765 for a 26, 27. Might be just 25, 50 bucks less, maybe something like that for the earlier version. But so really the price point isn't too bad. Again, this is something that Bill and I are not involved in, other than we're putting together this presentation to get it onto our website and get it out there, kind of help Mike move his product. You'll reach out to Mike to purchase these things direct off of him. And again, that information is close to this video. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure introducing you to this product. Buy these things. Reach out and contact Mike Hartman directly to put your order in. These will be available, like I said, first part of March.
The bushings aren't installed. Obviously, you got to put the fingers in it, save your fingers off of the drum, drive plate that you're replacing. You need to go through the process of putting your own bushings in it. Yeah. Something that I didn't cover in there, and you know, when you install the freeze plug in these, it's always mushroomed up. You got to get a bigger hammer to mash it down in order to get the pin in. Well, he relieved that, made that further up in there by about 50 thousandths or so. So that freeze plug, Welsh plug, give it a tap, it's out of the way. So it's a little easier to install. I've got some handouts that are up here on the table. I'm just going to leave them up here during when we have our break. If you're interested in it, all the information is there. Please feel free to come up and get one, okay? Any other questions? Yes.
Is this the guy that makes the AC brakes for trip over?
No. Mike is a club member in Arkansas that, but okay, so if you were a TT guy a number of years ago, he's the fellow that built the high-speed, brand new high-speed rear end ring gears. And as I understand, he's going to do that again. Apparently there's enough of demand for it. But Other questions about that, we'll kind of get into the next thing that I'd like to talk about. Mike,
Yep.
Vaughn, like you to share with us the fiasco that you drug us into.
Do I get to stand up?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Mike Vaughn. Most of you know me. I think I've talked to most of you know that I write the article in Vintage Ford, explaining how to repair a lot of things, and I enjoy doing that. Mike asked me to talk a little bit about an endeavor that we've gotten ourselves into. I probably drug Mike into it. But I live in Lincoln, Nebraska, and in Lincoln we have the Museum of American Speed up there. Okay. And with the museum, they have been donated a vehicle, a car, a Model T that represents the 10 millionth Model T Ford that was built in 1924. It is not the actual 10 millionth car. I'm going to tell you that now. It is a representation of it. And I just want to be upfront about that. I'm working on the car, and it is a 1924 touring car. It has a lot of provenance to the car. The car has represented the 10 millionth car for a lot of years. In fact, it made, on the 50th anniversary of the trip from New York to San Francisco via the Lincoln Highway, this car made that trip. It did it again on the 75th anniversary. And if you don't know about the trip, Henry Ford and Frank Kulik, when the car was built in June of 1924, the 10 millionth car was built in June of 1924, Frank Kulik drove the car via the Lincoln Highway from New York to San Francisco. So we're going to recreate it again this year, which will be the 100th anniversary in June of this year. And we're going to leave New York on June 2nd. And we're not quite sure how long it's going to take us yet, because we're working with the Lincoln Highway Association, and they kind of keep throwing wrenches into our itinerary by adding different stops along the way. For example, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania has reached out, and they're going to give us a police escort into Gettysburg. Mike and I are going to be driving it. But they're going to give us a police escort into Gettysburg to a museum in Gettysburg. They're going to park the car in front of the museum, and they're going to have live music and food trucks there and photo ops for the people that live in Gettysburg. And I think there's some other places along the way that have similar things set up for us. So we're hoping to be able to get it done by about the 20th of June. Right now, starting on the 2nd of June and arriving in San Francisco by about the 20th. That's the plan right now, averaging right around 200 miles a day. It's going to be about 3,300 miles total. So this really ties in well to what we're talking about with long-distance touring. Mm-hmm. And what Mike wanted me to talk about is a little bit of the preparations that we're doing to go that far in a Model T. This car obviously has done the trip before, and I was really quite surprised at how much wear there was in a lot of the components of this car as we tore it apart. The car is in my shop right now, and I tore, last week I tore into the front end on the car, and when I got to kingpin bushings, tie rod bushings and bolts, drag link bushing or drag link balls, and the pitman arm ball, all of those had pretty significant wear in them. Every joint had a little bit of wear, quite a bit of wear actually, so that when you wiggled a wheel up front, there was a lot of play. And by the time it got back to the steering wheel, I would imagine we had probably close to 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of play back in the steering wheel of wear. So we want to take all that out, tighten all that stuff up in the front end on a long distance trip. You kind of want to make sure your car's in good shape from front to back, and everything mechanical on this car is going to get touched. If it moves, we're touching it. Whether it be steering gears or a rear end. We took the rear end apart, and the first thing I found on the rear end was the right rear axle shaft where the keyway goes was broke out. And then on the left side, the bearing wear was about 15 thousandths on the outer bearing. So it's kind of out of spec for what you want to do on a long distance trip. And so I dug through some parts in my supplies, and I found some axle shafts they're used axle shafts, but they're good. None of them have more than 2 thousandths wear in a bearing surface. And the tapers are good, and the keyways are all good. Threads are good at the ends of the shaft. The gears are good. And so we're going to use used shafts in there. One of the advantages to putting those back together with the new bearing races that we can get from our suppliers is that they're already a little thicker to take up some of that wear. So we'll be able to put everything back together pretty nice and tight. We're going to put a 10-tooth pinion in it, and this is just my opinion, but a 10-tooth in any Model T on a 40-tooth ring, a 4-to-1 gear ratio, is an ideal ratio for a Model T. It gets you into where you're using your torque in your Model T engine to the best advantage. And it doesn't hurt you that much on your top end with the 4-to-1, but it gives you a lot better lower end, and especially if you're going up hills. So I run a 4-to-1 in my touring car, and in my Roadster I run 4-to-1 just because it's a good gear set, and I really like it, and it doesn't hurt me on the top end. I can still run my car 45 miles an hour with the 4-to-1 in there, but I can get away from stop signs better. I can get up hills a little better, and you have a little bit better braking with stock Model T brakes with the 4-to-1. So to me, it's just a better setup all the way around. So that's how we're going to set this car up along with the Warford. We're going to use a KC Warford with it. So then in the overdrive, it's going to give us a little more. We'll be about 325-to-1 with the Warford overdrive with the 4-to-1 gear set in the rear end. So that'll give us a little better top end yet, so we can probably cruise 45 pretty easily with the car and not be pushing the RPMs over the top. We are going to put a scat crank in it, a counterbalance crank. One of the things I'd like to mention is the support that we've been getting for this project. Our parts vendors, Langs has donated $500 worth of parts to this project. Birdhaven has donated whatever we need, basically, to the project. And then we've had a lot of individuals step forward and give us cash donations to help with it as well, and clubs. Our local Model T chapter donated $500 to help with this project because it's a kind of a pricey endeavor, and we're doing it for a nonprofit museum, so we're trying to keep the costs down as low as we can, and it's been great that the support we've been getting. But again, setting it up for a long-distance tour, we want to make sure that we have the car ready to go and ready to roll when we leave New York City on June 2nd. And we don't have to worry about too much. So we're not going to be carrying a lot of extra parts with us. We don't need to. We're going to have a good car to start with. We're going to have new tires on it, new tubes, new flaps in there. Bearings are all done. Wheel bearings are done, greased. Everything's lubricated, fresh oil, new timers, fresh coils. Everything's ready to go. So we'll be able to run it down the road. Now, what do you need for a long distance tour like this? We're 3,300 miles on a Model T going down the road, and what do you need? I think we discussed this. The most important thing you can carry is a cell phone, probably.
Cell phone and a credit card.
And a credit card.
And a credit card.
Yeah.
And the number of the national.
The other thing that I think is super important, if you're going to go on a long distance trip, carry the phone number to the Model T Ford Club of America's main office in Richmond, Indiana. You can call the secretary there and ask her wherever you're at. Let's say we break down in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So I can call them up and say, can you tell me what members we have in Gettysburg? And they give me a list of names for people and phone numbers of people that live in Gettysburg. I can get on the phone and call them and say, hey, I broke a fan shaft in Gettysburg. You wouldn't happen to have an extra fan shaft. And they might bring you one out. and you put it in your car and go. You know, you might have to give them a couple dollars for it, or you might have to send them a horn like we did for Nick's when we broke his fan shaft. The guy needed a horn, so we got a horn, or we got a fan shaft for the car, and then when I got home, I sent the guy a mag horn for his car. So and we replaced the shaft, but it was a nice deal, you know. But it's important that you have somebody that you can contact to get parts. The other thing is, if you don't have anybody nearby that can send you a part, you can call Lang's, or you can call Snyder's, or you can call one of the vendors and have them overnight a part to you. So you don't need to carry a lot of stuff with you. Now, tools is another thing. You might want to carry a toolbox with a pretty good supply of tools. Not a huge toolbox, but stuff that fits most everything on a Model T, 9/16, 5/8, 3/4, 11/16 wrenches, and a pair of pliers and a pair of snips, and maybe a roll of baling wire or some duct tape. And keep those things in the car with you, because there's a lot of things you can use for quick repairs, roadside repairs, with just a few tools. But to carry a lot of parts, you don't have to. We're going to carry some spare coils with us, because that's kind of an expendable item. Maybe a spare timer with us. A few quarts of oil, because Model Ts, we know Model Ts, no matter how tight we make them, they still leak oil. And we'll use some of that. And maybe a couple of extra spare tires in the trailer that we have, but I don't think we're going to carry much more beyond that. But the big thing is to make sure the car is tour ready before you go. And then I don't think you need too much. Model Ts are pretty dependable. When you look at it, 1924, they did this same trip, and I don't think they had a parts trailer following them when they did it. Right. You know? And so you kind of think about what they did back then, and we can do that.
I think Ted Kyle and I have a friend, he's since passed on, Frank Banna. Maybe some of you remember him. One time Frank cornered us, you know, and he says, "You guys are nuts." "What do you mean, Frank?" He says, "Those Model Ts, they're a toy. They're not meant to do what you guys do." And that's not the case. We've done some serious driving, haven't we, Ted, wherever you are? Yep. Serious driving around the countryside, and we have had our share of problems. But we don't call them problems. It's just an event.
Adventures.
and to kind of reinforce something that Mike was saying, reach out, call somebody. Seems like every time we had an event, I mean like rear tire, rear wheel goes by the front of the car, you know, ear transmit engines try to fall out. There was always a guy. It might not have been a club member, but there was some guy pulled over. "Hey, what you doing?" You know, and we're looking for a welding shop. Well, you know where one is? Out in the middle of, where was that? West Virginia? Virginia, I think it was. I mean, out in the middle of nowhere, and this guy just pulls up this old beat-up truck, and he says, "What's wrong?" And then we broke the ear on this pan. "We need to find a weld shop. You know where one is?" He says, "Yeah, right across the road." He was a turkey farmer. We pulled in, he welded it up for us. So, you know, taking off, yeah, there's some incidentals that you should have, but a phone call, you know, or just being broke down on the side of the road. Somebody will stop, and it turns out you'll run into somebody that can help you out. And fundamentally, keep on talking. You're doing a great job.
So I'd like to entertain any questions anybody would have about, if you want to talk about this car or what we're doing. And
You figure on changing oil somewhere in there?
Yes.
Okay, the question was, do we plan on servicing the car, changing the oil on the trip? And yes, we will probably do it 3 or 4 times along the route, where we'll carry some extra oil with us, or purchase some oil on the way, drain the oil out, and replace the oil and service the car. Probably service a lot of the stuff daily, pay daily attention to oil in the front end, in the little oilers on the axle and that kind of stuff. You know, give the rear axle bearings a squirt of grease every now and then. The U-joint's going to need a little grease every now and then. Those are things that, you know, if you ever look at a lubrication chart, they were meant to be lubricated pretty frequently. And so we're gonna maintain the car as we go. and hopefully keep it up. Yes?
What type of documentation are you going to have as far as videos and stuff like that will be available for doing?
Okay, that's a great question. He asked what kind of documentation that we're going to have, and the Museum of American Speed is sponsoring this, and they actually have some people working on it now, but on their webpage, they're going to have a link to a daily blog that we do on this trip. So we're going to invite anybody that wants to join us for any amount of time on the trip. We're going to follow the Lincoln Highway in New York City, which is basically US Highway 30 all the way across the country. And if anybody wants to meet us somewhere along the way, all you have to do is show up, and you can join us for, if you want to go for a couple hours or a half a day or a couple of days or a week, you can. Yeah. We'll be happy to have you follow along with us.
Do you have the website, and will it tell us the route you're taking, the road, possibly?
That's all in preliminary right now, but fundamentally it's the Lincoln Highway.
We've got a preliminary itinerary printed out where we know we're going to start on the 2nd of June. That's the only for sure known thing we know right now, okay? Because we've got a lot of information coming in still from Lincoln Highway Association. They have chapters all along in different states, and so they're working with us as well. So when we get a little more detail on what we're going to have, we'll make that public. We'll probably post it on the forum. That's another thing. We'll have daily postings on the forum, on the Model T Ford forum. Mike and I will make sure that happens, okay? We'll get some information out so people can follow along. We're going to direct you probably more than likely to the link for the Museum of American Speed's deal to follow daily activities, but we're going to bring up every day, we'll bring up something on the forum so you can check it out, reminding you to check it out or whatever. And it'll be interesting. But we think it'd be a blast if we can get cars to join us every day. I think
how are you going to get your car from Lincoln up to New York?
The museum is they've got a trailer, and believe it or not, they're talking about getting Ford Motor Company to sponsor us with a Ford Lightning F-150 to pull the trailer. And Mike and I have both said if it takes us 24 hours of driving day and night, that Lightning's not going to beat us to San Francisco. Because I think I can get that Model T across the country faster than a Lightning. So.
Yeah, we won't be playing very nice for a promotional setting, but it isn't going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, but.
Make Speedster instead.
Huh?
Make your Speedster instead.
It'd be more fun doing this than pretty close to stock.
I was just kind of curious, what kind of radiators do you have in the car? Is it original round tube?
The question he asked was what kind of radiators do we run in our cars, and I personally run modern flat tube radiators in all of my cars. The flat tube radiator provides better cooling because it's a bigger surface that transfers the heat from the fins, from the tubes to the fins more efficiently than the round tube does because it's a larger surface area. So the flat tube radiators, if you're going to do extensive touring, are really a better radiator to use, I think. That's my opinion.
I agree.
I would suggest that that's what you use. They're just a little more efficient in cooling than the round tube is. If you're going to be entering your car in car shows and having it judged, you're probably going to lose some points having a flat tube in it. But if you don't care about that and just care about operation, then the flat tube's probably a little better.
So does the 10 million Model T have a flat tube in it now?
It has a round tube in it that's not any good. So we're gonna be changing that out with a new flat tube radiator. And actually, I do for the Museum of American Speed. I do a Model T driving school every other year there, and I'll be doing it this year as well, where we have anybody that wants. The museum advertises on their website, and we get people from all over the United States that have it on their bucket list to drive a Model T. And we spend a day. I think we've had Who's been through my class? There we go. Yep, Todd's been through my class. By the time they get to the end of the class, at the end of the day, they've driven 3 Model Ts with 3 different instructors in the seat with them, and they're pretty proficient at the end of the day. From when they started to when they finished, it's pretty amazing. They get a little more confidence. They're not running it into the ditch anymore. They're not stepping it down. And they made me a T-shirt, by the way, because I teach the class. And one of the things I harp on all the time is driving a Model T is all about neutral. If you can find neutral, you can drive a Model T. And so I've got a T-shirt now that says it's all about neutral. and that's so true on driving a Model T. But these guys that did that have come out to the class, and we've had, father-son teams. We've had a lot of women, probably 50%, close to 50% of my students have been women. And it's pretty interesting. So if you've got that on your bucket list that you want to teach your wife how to drive a Model T, send her to me. I'll be glad to teach her. Yeah, we're glad to have her. We limit the class to 10 students per class. And that way, we spend the whole day with you. In the morning, we go through some of the history of the Model T, and then I use the cutout that the museum has, the cutout engine and transmission, to show how everything operates on the Model T. And then we have a speedster brought in. The speedster's nice to use because everything's open on it, and we can demonstrate how the Model T functions, and everybody can get around it and see it. So we use that, and then we actually use the speedster. One of the speedsters is one of the 3 cars you get to drive too. So you get a little variety in the cars. So if you're interested in that, this is kind of getting off subject here a little bit, but it's something that's kind of neat to do, and I don't mind pitching that because it's a lot of fun. Steve Hughes over here, he's been one of my driving instructors. Ken Cheney next to him has been a driving instructor, and our local chapter participates in that, and we enjoy doing it. So we're going to do it. This year's going to be limited because I'm not going to be there in June because we're going to be doing this long distance trip. So we're only going to do 2 classes this year. It'll be later in the year. But again, through the Museum of American Speed's website, you can sign up to do any of those classes that we do. And you'll get your money's worth out of it. I think they charge a little bit, but you get shirts and books and all kinds of stuff, and a meal out of it. They feed you. So there's a little fee to it all, but it's worthwhile. But getting back on subject with the long distance tour, any other questions?
You say the Museum of Speed there is the one that's sponsoring this tour?
They own the car now. The car's been donated to the museum. And anything Model T, it seems like I get roped into it with that museum now. But we do I'm on the committee for the Speedster Reunion we hold every other year there, the International Speedster Reunion. And since Larry Sigworth passed on a few years ago, I've taken over the Model T Ford Club of America Speedster Racer Hall of Fame. And that is kept at the museum. It's going to be changing a little bit. If you've seen the Speedster Racer Hall of Fame at the museum, they have it on a wall where they're losing that wall now. So they're going to digitalize it all, and you'll be able to see it on a screen, a monitor. So it's going to be changed a little bit, but it's still going to be maintained at the museum. I think they're going to move it upstairs with the Model T stuff with the racers. So, just another little plug for the museum. They've just added 90,000 square feet more to that museum. They just opened it here the past couple of months. And what they did was they moved the Al Unser Museum from Albuquerque up to Lincoln. And there was a lot of stuff there. If you'd ever been through the Al Unser Museum, it took a lot of semi-loads to haul that up to Lincoln. And so that's been added into the new facility. So get a chance to come to Lincoln and go through that museum. It's very worthwhile.
Who's riding with you, Mike?
And we've got a family that's coming with us as well. The family that donated the car, their name is Hathaway. They're from Iowa, and their dad is the one that built this car up. But he passed away several years ago, and so they've donated the car to the museum. There's 4 siblings that are going to be joining us along the way. They've all 4 been through my Model T driving school. They hadn't ever driven the car before that, but I've taken them through the course. I think a couple of them will probably want to drive some of the time as we go, because the car their dad did it twice before, at the 50th and the 75th anniversary. So it's going to be kind of that. You had a question?
You guys gonna be sleeping in tents?
No.
Nor am I sleeping in bunk beds with rubber sheets.
That's another story. You had the short sheets.
I had the short sheets,
Yeah.
yes I did.
John had the long sheets. But no, what we're going to do, the Lincoln Highway Association is working with us too, and giving us a lot of information about a lot of vintage hotels that have been along the Lincoln Highway for a long time. So kind of drive-in motor motels and that kind of stuff. There's quite a few of those along the way, along that route that have been maintained in really good shape, and they want to try to keep us in a lot of those along the way. So, and you know, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of nights where we're in the Holiday Inn Express too, but we're not going to be sleeping in tents. It's just not going to happen. Yes?
Are you gonna having like a wagon behind you so you can park that thing inside of a trailer at night?
Well, if the lightning can keep up, we'll have a wagon behind us. I don't know that the lightning is going to be there, but yeah, the museum is going to take us out in a truck and trailer, and then we're going to start driving the car, and they're going to follow along the route with the trailer. So at night, we'll be able to put the car up at night and park it out of the weather. So it's going to...
For somebody that wants the radiator cap or something.
Yeah, you know, we're not going to put any special radiator cap on it, but we might.
You probably said I missed it, but what model of car is it?
It's a 1924 touring car. And if you look, if you Google 10 millionth Model T, you'll get pictures of it with Henry Ford standing next to it and stuff. They'll come up and this car's painted exactly that same way. It says the 10 millionth Ford on it, and New York to San Francisco, Lincoln Highway. That stuff's all printed on the car. So it's got a lot of neat history in it that way. It does right now. Currently, it's got on the splash aprons golden anniversary, which was 1974. This is the platinum anniversary, 100 years. So we're going to take and put some new splash aprons on the car, and the old ones are going to go on display with the car in the museum. So.
Well, if you run into a bind between Iowa and Colorado and need something, give me a holler.
Thanks. One of the things, you know, looking at the car, everything mechanical, and it's things that you don't think about a lot of times, but, you know, here's a car that looks really nice at first glance. It's a pretty good looking car. Yeah. And every one of the spokes was loose on it, all the wooden spokes. And so I ordered a new set of spokes and re-spoked all 4 of the wheels in it, and got nice tight spokes. And now, you know, that's some of the safety of the car. And those old 100-year-old hickory spokes dry out over 100 years and become pretty brittle. Hickory was used in the wheels because of not only the hardness of the hickory, but the flexibility of hickory. And so you can turn a corner and it'll flex instead of break. And so that's something to think about on a long distance tour in a Model T, is to make sure your wheels are good, especially if you're driving wood wheels. It's just imperative that those wheels be in great shape if you're going a long distance. I think that there was a bunch from Germany that did a cross-country tour a few years ago and found that out, that they started out with poor spokes, and by the time they got to Lincoln, they were looking for somebody to help put spokes in because they were losing spokes. And I wasn't there when they got to Lincoln. Unfortunately, I have a spoke press and all the stuff to do it. But I was on the national tour in Wisconsin when they got to Lincoln, so I wasn't able to help them. The guys at the museum were able to get it done for them, though. So they got them down the road.
The car now has Rocky Mountain brakes, which it had on the previous run.
Yeah, they're similar to Rocky Mountain. They're sure stop brakes that are patented in 1919. They work similarly to Rocky Mountain brakes, but instead of brake rods, they use a cable with a pulley.
Like the ACs.
Like the AC brakes do. And so those were on it, and we're going to put them back on. I'm relining those brake shoes right now, and we'll reuse them. So
I'd also say we're putting a Warford transmission in it, so it's a shortened torque tube drive shaft. All of that's going to be taken out when we're done, and we're going to put the car back to the way it is.
Well, we'll put it to, we'll leave the ring gear in it.
Yeah, the ring gear in it, but
Originally they had a
3-to-1.
3-to-1 in it, so it was a 13-tooth pinion and a 39-tooth ring, and that's just not a good gear set for Model T. I know the Hathaways had followed, these kids had been following their dad in a motorhome with some family, and they said that they were going up hills and it would only go 4 or 5 miles an hour up hills, and that was because of that high-speed gear set that they had in it. And we're going to have some pretty good hills on this trip, especially when we get out west. So we wanted it to be able to climb on its own. One of the things that I wanted to bring up on a car such as this one, when you are doing long distance tour, is gasoline and your gasoline level, especially when you get into the hills. You want to be able to keep your tank above half. We did a tour with Bill and Nellie in Arkansas last year, 2 years ago, and they took me up a hill, and I was in the touring car, and I had 8 gallons of gas in it and ran out going up the hill with 8 gallons of gas in the tank, going up a steep hill. I was really surprised that 8 gallons wouldn't get me up there. And I had to back into there was another little road, and I got it running again, and then I got to run at it and finished getting up the hill, but it was...
Mount Nebo?
No, it wasn't Mount Nebo.
Pettigene, I think.
Yeah, it was on to where that museum was at.
Pettigene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That hotel.
You mentioned you had the Wolford rear end and a 3.25 to 1. Is that the same as the Russell rear end? What's the difference there?
What's the difference on the...
Okay, a Ruxel, all it is a lower gear.
Yeah, it's just an underdrive.
So if you had 3-to-1s or 366 or 4-to-1, whatever, in final, when you go into Ruxel, you're just going into a lower gear ratio. Okay.
The Warford is a 3-speed that gives you an underdrive, it gives you a straight-through drive, regular Ford drive, and then an overdrive. The Ruxel is only an underdrive.
Right. And the underdrive of the Warford is similar, very similar to what the Ruxel is when you're in Ruxel.
I guess I was under the impression when I heard my dad talk about that, swap meets and that was the way you would be able to go on long trips because it would give you the higher speed. But it's just the one gear.
Yeah, it gives you the Warford, or the Ruxel, and I like Ruxels. I have them in my cars. I love them for going up hills. If you've got steep hills, you can drop that down into Ruxel, and then it gives you an intermediate gear between your Ford high and your Ford low. So it's like taking a Model A and shifting it up into second gear. It gives you that intermediate gear so you can get up a hill. And really is a needed gear in a Model T, especially if you're in hilly country.
So you could actually shift the Russell gear. You wouldn't miss a solid change. You would actually shift it just like the Wolford.
Right, it's got a shift stick, and it's just from high range to low range in the rear end. And so if you shift it, you still only have 2 speeds, the high and low, but you're in a low and a medium high. So
Lower high.
The other nice thing about a Ruxtol is I mentioned that the 4-to-1 gave you improved braking. Ruxtols do too. When you're in low, you have improved braking because of the
Engine brake.
The engine brake. Yeah.
So when you're talking Warford in this car, you're talking about a KC.
A KC Warford, right?
I assume there was an original Warford.
Yes.
Did it have a high and a low?
Same deal. Yeah.
So it had overdrive and
Right.
Yes.
With the KC will seem to
No, not really. It's just the design of the gear allows it to shift in. So kind of a racing cut gear, but it wasn't necessarily synchronized.
I know that's what Elmer always called it.
Yeah.
And the other thing you can do if you're going to go on a long distance trip is take Bill Howell with you. Because Bill he drives a 25 Roadster pickup with a couple of boxes full of parts and tools and stuff, and he's got anything you need in there, right?
I never haul anything anymore.
But Mike doesn't need it because he's got his keeper.
Yeah, I got my handler.
But Bill always brings a pretty good supply of things with him.
Yeah.
Pretty rare we haven't found what we need.
I think Nick Nicholas used to carry a front axle. Didn't you carry a front axle into the rear seat of your Touring? Got stuck up on top of the... A main leaf. Front main leaf. Some of the stuff you take with you is things that you've ran into troubles with, you know? And for years you carried a main leaf. Do you still carry it? You still carry it? You still got it, okay.
One of the things I always take on a long distance trip, and it's always under the front seat or under the back seat of my touring car or whatever, is I put a gasket set under there. It's nice to have those gaskets. And I've even needed a head gasket on it. I blew a head gasket on a tour one time and needed a head gasket. So, and I pulled into it was when we still had Sears, and I pulled into a Sears parking lot and changed the head gasket, and I went into Sears and bought me a little cheap torque wrench so I could torque the head bolts back down.
Don't forget a buddy knife.
Yeah, but yeah.
So an observation in 1924, you had parts clear across the country.
Probably. Most towns had a Ford dealership in 1924. 1924 was Ford's biggest production year for the Model T. They made 2.5 million cars in 1924. So they were getting them out there, and they had dealerships everywhere. So they had a pretty good support.
You got dealerships everywhere.
Yeah.
With batteries.
Yeah.
I have a question for the group, and we'll do it with a show of hands. How many people on a tour went on a 500-mile tour? Raise your hand. Just quite a few, everybody.
You mean in one day or?
No, not one day. One tour. One tour. I mean, you'd be pretty tough to do 500 in one day. Can be done. All right. So what? How about 1,000 miles? How about 2,000 miles? Well, we got a few. 3,000. 4,000. All right. 5,000? The reason I asked is that I'm curious when people go, oh my gosh, I drove my Model T on a real long trip and it was 75 miles, you know, and these cars can make long distance drives. Bill, what do I have up here on? We're kind of running out of time. Mike just did a fantastic job, by the way. What do I got up on here, Bill? Next. What am I supposed to do? Briefly going to just run through some things if you think you want to go do a Model T trip, and I hope maybe we've shared some of it. The girls certainly did. Your daughters. take off, go. You might have a problem. Somebody will be there. So, if you're running with a group, between the group, you can figure out how to keep things going. Yes.
One other thing, to point this out, if you're building an engine to go on a tour, and you're getting rods for it, instead of getting 4 rods, get 5, so that you can match the weight, the rods. You'll have a spare rod if you have a ballot problem, and it'll be still balanced with the other rods. Just a thought.
Okay, it's a good thought. I don't carry spare rods. Mike, you carry spare rods? Bill? Hal? Ted Kyle? Nick Nicholas? You used to. Well, that was on one of our drives. Where were we at on that one? Yeah, we were somewhere. It's a good idea. Sure, go ahead. I mean, if it makes you feel good here, but Ted Kyle and I have replaced a rod at the highest hill, and they called it the highest hill in Oklahoma. He blew a rod. He blew a rod going up it. Kip Jones went and got my shop, brought us down. That's a whole other story. But I mean, the point is the car broke down, it got fixed, and it continued on with the tour. Nick lost a rod on one of our tours, and we ended up at the motel. The manager of the motel's husband worked at a RV place. They opened the place up for us. We pulled in there, and they just turned us loose in there and got a rod shipped in and fixed it and repaired it. Bill Howell lost a broken axle in Virginia. We were on our way to see a fella, and Bill says, "Oh, I'm done. I'm on the trailer. I'm going to go rent a car." Blah blah blah. Wait a second. We're going to see this guy. Well, sure enough, he had an axle and he had a shop, and we all stuck in there, and there was 4 of us working. And what are you doing to me here? Oh, yeah. Broke his axle, and we were on our way to see a fella that did a coast-to-coast tour. What was his name? I don't remember. At any rate, he had everything we needed. Had a lathe. It's like I said earlier. It seems like any time that we've ever had a problem, there's been a guy. Huh? Oh, you want the moonshine story? Well, okay. So one thing that I have learned, and I dearly love this group, this small group that I'm with. But if there's 4 of us in the room, there's 4 ways to do something, and y'all 3 are wrong. So we were rebuilding this rear end until, 1, 2 o'clock. Something like that, and the guy that owned this place, he made his own moonshine. And we're under the car, and all of a sudden I hear, now if you know Ted Kyle will have an adult beverage on occasion, but you're not a big time at any rate. I hear, "Oh, Mikey." And I slide out from his car, and he's holding just a little bit. This is probably mouthwash cups of moonshine, 2 different types. At least that's what the guy said. And his eyes are the size of 55 Chevrolet hubcaps, and he's got a grin from ear to ear, and he's going, "Oh, Mikey, you'll like this." Well, anyhow, everybody had a little pull on this stuff, and it was 2 different types. You took the first one, the other one tasted the same, but I don't know. But for about 30 minutes, there was elbows and you know what, more stuff got done in a heartbeat and got the old car back on the road. But we've always had the ability of any time up. Well, I guess I'm not in charge of that. But we've had all kinds of different things happen to us. Coils have went out. Like I said, axles broke. a flat tire or two. We had the one tour where we replaced tires every night. One fella had bad rims and it was cutting the tubes, cutting the tires out real quick. But it was all of these things we just refer to it as an event, and you just take off. And we've had the occasion where we've had one individual in particular, I remember, Robert, he had never took a very long drive, and he came with us on one, and it was fun watching him. The further we got away from the trailer, the more nervous he got, because his safety net was now 300 miles, 500 miles, 1,000 miles back. And, you know, 3 or 4 days out on the road, he got real comfortable and enjoyed himself. So it's a lot of fun. It's another one of our trips. I think well, Ted, you all know Ted Kyle. His wife one time said, well, you know, it's all about Ted. Well, that prompted these T-shirts. And all of our T-shirts says, what would it say? Who's Ted? Where's Ted? Something like that. And all of our caps said, we're not Ted, but his did say, I'm Ted. So we had a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of teasing, a lot of good times. But seriously, the parts that we carry can range from just what you know, an extra carburetor. You know, if you're running coils, the group that you're running with, if you're all running stock Model Ts, chances are you're all going to have a better trip. Because somebody will have a coil and somebody will have this. But if you're running a Joe Hunt Magneto or a Bosch front plate distributor and you're the only one there, you better have your Pertronics or your points or your coils to take care of you. And sometimes that stuff's kind of hard to find when you're out on the road. But closer you keep a Model T to stock, I think the better off you are on long distance drives. There's parts all over the place. It's a phone call away. We all know Steve Jelf. I remember the first time he drove to the OFC, he was having some car issues, and I went up and said, yeah, something isn't right, but, Steve, everybody knows you. You'll never be within 50, 75 miles of somebody that wouldn't help you. And he did have some problems going up, but he got there. And he repeated that trip for a number of years. And as I understand, he's coming back to home, so maybe he'll be doing those drives again. But just common everyday things, the gasket repair kit, engine overhaul kit, an extra carburetor. Nick, you got anything that you'd suggest? I think that's the most important thing, is know your car. Know your car, know what you've got in it. If it's a new car to you, I don't care who put it together. I'd like to know what's in the rear end. I don't want any of those old Babbitt thrust washers in there. I want to know that the rear end's together. I mean, that's what stops you, right? You lose the rear end, you have no brakes. You don't necessarily need to rebuild the engine in its entirety, but drop the inspection cover off of it. See what kind of slack you have in things. Tighten the bearings up. Give it a good oil change. Make sure that you got good bands. If you have outside brakes, that's a plus. Make sure that those are all in proper working order. Look at the fan belt. Check the bearing in the fan blade. Kind of know the condition of your radiator. If it doesn't seem to heat up on you, take off. If you're having some overheating problems, you will have more overheating problems out on a long drive because you're maybe getting out of your comfort zone. I mean, if you live in Kansas and you're used to kind of Dorothy land, and you head out to the Rocky Mountains or down into Arkansas or southeast Oklahoma, we got some pulls down there. Get up into the Rocky Mountains, you can get into some real pulls there, but if you're staying on paved roads or the old rail beds, it's a nice, easy, pleasant drive. See the countryside. Plan your tour out. plan your route out, look for things to do. I mean, if it wasn't for the old Model T, number one, I wouldn't know you guys. And number two, I wouldn't have ever stopped at half of the places. No, I'd go 75% of the places that we've stopped in. You know, I mean, I wouldn't have went to the Bluebird factory in Arkansas and watched them make the little bluebirds, but that's something we did. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. So look around the countryside that you're going through. I do have some handouts. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing wrapped up here. I do have some handouts. Bill Howell put together a list. We love the Howells. Thank you. But Bill does carry an awful lot of parts. And so if we're broke down, a lot of times we just go dig in Bill's truck. So there is some handouts. I'll set them out here. You're welcome to look forward to it. But I don't know if this helped you any. I think the main point is that these old cars are meant to be driven. Don't be scared to go out on your own or with a small group. It's a lot of fun. The friendship that you'll develop out of it is it's just amazing. It's a fantastic hobby. I lost my wife about 4 years ago, and if it wasn't for this hobby, she probably would have killed me. But at any rate, any questions? Did we bore you to death? Okay. Anybody ready to take off on a 2,500 mile drive with me?